Hey guys, we're here with the other elements of design, and we're going to look at shape, space, and texture. So we're going to go through these kind of quickly because there's a lot of examples, and so I just kind of want to go through and touch base on all of these. So whenever we talk about shape in particular, we're talking about the silhouette, or basically kind of like the outline. So it's described as the outline of the entire garment. The goal is to complement the shape of the body. What we also know as well is that we're looking at the shape of the body itself. So there's actually a multitude of different types of body shapes that we need to address. And we also know that some of these body shapes just don't work well with particular cuts and styles of certain clothing. However, each body shape does have a type of style and type of clothing cuts that works for them. So, and it's different for both men and women. So we know that the goal, again, is to complement the shape of the body, but that changes depending on the emphasis of the designer. So again, we've got the women up here. We've got like the inverted triangle, the lean column, the rectangle, the apple, the pear, the neat hourglass, and the full hourglass. And a lot of people just tend to think like I'm apple, pear, or hourglass. And really, there's so many more. And then for the men, we have the ones down here. They've also got the inverted triangle, the oval, the triangle, the trapezoid, and then the last one, which we're going to get to in just a second. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But again, we're looking at body shapes. You want to kind of determine your body shape, helps you figure out which fashion styles work best for your figure. And to do this, you're going to need your bust, which is your chest, your waist, not your wasset, your waist, hips, and shoulder measurements to help determine your body shape. Now, normally in class, we would actually take these measurements and then we would compare them and figure out, okay, looking at these, which body shape are we? And unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity right now. If you are interested though, you guys can email me and I can walk you through kind of how to take these measurements and then help you determine what your body shape is. Some of you guys may actually just know in general. So the different types of body shapes, we're going to look at the ones for women. You've got the inverted triangle, which is basically your shoulders and potentially your bust are bigger than your hips. Your rectangle is when your shoulders, bust, hips, they're around the same size with no defined waist. So if you can kind of see through these two body shapes, it just kind of goes straight down. You can really tell there's really not a lot of like gap in between there. And then over here, you have a little bit more of a definition in there. Do keep in mind that body shape is not really something that you can change. It can, of course, go bigger and go smaller, but the actual, if you're a rectangle, you're probably always going to maintain a rectangle unless there's surgical enhancements. But for the most part, whatever your body shape is what it will probably be throughout your life. So whenever we look at the triangle, or also known as the pear, it's when your hips are a little bit bigger than your shoulders. So you can still end up having a defined waist. You just got some hips in you. The hourglass, that's the one that we typically tend to hear a lot, or people will refer to as the hourglass. So basically your shoulders and your hips are about the same, and then your waist goes in a lot and it looks like an old school hourglass that you would flip over. The apple, the shoulders are broader than the hips, not really curvy. You don't really have a defined waist. It's just, this is kind of where most of this sits. So for men, you guys, again, also have the inverted triangle, your broader shoulders and a chest with a narrower waist. Rectangular, your shoulders and chest are around the same as their waist and hips. So again, it kind of goes straight down. Over here, you have a little bit more of a definition. The triangle, you have larger waist and hips with narrower shoulders. And then the trapezoid, which is one of the ones that the men have and women don't, is that your waist is slightly narrower than the chest and the shoulders. So again, it does come down. You get a little bit more going in as compared to the rectangle. It's just a straight down. So it's a very slight difference between a rectangular and a trapezoid. And then you also have the oval, which is equivalent to about the pear or the apple for the women. The center of the torso is wider than the shoulders and the hips. So that's kind of like going with the body shapes. Now let's look at the actual shapes of clothing. So the shapes are the silhouettes in fashion. We have 4 popular ones that we're going to look at. So the bell, it's diagonal or horizontal lines. It can also be A-line or bell bottoms. So think of this literally, think of like all the Disney princesses. They all typically tend to wear a big bell dress. So it's really tight and defined up at the top down to their waist, their true waist, because your waist actually sits higher than you think. think. And then they have a big, huge bottom skirt of their dress, and it kind of looks like a little bell that you would ring. So that's kind of like this is a modern day take on that. So it's really defined at her waist. You can see that it's tighter up here at her shoulders, over her bust, and then it's loose, big, and flowy down here, and it is the bell style. The natural is your body's outline. So this is equivalent to like wearing the skinny jeans or jeggings, leggings, if you were to do the more fitted tops and stuff like that. So the natural is just the actual body's outline. You're not enhancing anything. You're not covering up anything. So again, that would be the extremely tailored pants, the tight fitted shirt as well. The full, we tend to have gathered skirts or dresses, really long full sleeves, and then usually a wide pant leg. So that's kind of what we're seeing here is it's tighter right here, and then it's a wide pant leg that goes all the way down. The jacket also hangs off a little bit bigger too, and you can tell that the sleeves, though they're thin, they're not super defined on her arms. So she still has a lot of wiggle room in her sleeves. So it's kind of like if you were combining the bell and the natural, it would produce a full. The last one I'm going to look at is called tubular. That's rectangular, it's up and down. Really, what you're looking at is that your waist is not defined. So think of this more as like your hoodies and your sweatshirts. So they're a little different than the full, because the full you can still have a defined waistline in there, but your tubular, you don't, and that's the biggest difference. So this just kind of goes over her. You get a little bit of a fitting down there just from that bottom waistband, but it's the same thing with her too. It just literally goes straight down. You really can't even see where their waist is at. So that's what you really need to know about shape, which is kind of a lot of information very quickly. But when we talk about shape, we're talking about body shape, but then we're also talking about the shapes of the clothes as well. Space it's very easy to define, but it's very easy to get confused because people think that it's supposed to be more challenging and more difficult to think about than what it truly is. We talk about space, we're talking about anything inside of a shape. So that would be like the prints on a garment. If you had cutouts, or like if you had distressed pants with holes in it, that would be space. And the distressed pants would be an example of negative space because we've taken something out. So typically, to kind of help give examples of what space is, internal lines, they're either decorative or structural, that divides up the space. So looking at some of these examples right here, this is an example of negative space. We have removed some of the pants, even though the pants are still fully functional pants. So we've taken out sections of it. It'd be the same thing as like if you did cutouts and things like that. So the distressed pants would be an example of negative space. And this shirt right here, her entire outfit is black except for the words young and powerful. So the words themselves is what's helping break up space. This whole thing is considered space. And right down here uses structural lines in her waistline of the belt loops to help break up some of that space. But to make that more noticeable, they put the graphic print on there in white, and it says young and powerful. So that's helping break up the space as well. Over here is another example of negative space because it has the tie back here. All of this section right down here is missing. They just tied it together, so that would be an example of negative space. So looking back at this example, she has an entirely white shirt. Just because it's white and there's nothing in there, it's a solid color and there's nothing in there, it's still an example of space. It's basically in existence. This one just happens to break it up. This one also happens to break up this space and remove some of it. So these are all examples of space. Texture. Texture can be really fun to play with. So I know this is an example of a dog, but they can still technically have clothes. And also, this is really fluffy. So when we talk about texture, we're describing the surface characteristics. And that, just from kind of looking at it, can kind of determine, okay, this is going to be really soft. You go and feel it, it's going to be relatively soft. Fabric textures result from the types of fiber used, the yarn, how it was made, and then if they put any types of finishing touches on it. So if you see fabric that looks awfully shiny, do know that that is synthetic, which means it is man-made in a lab. It's not, you're not going to go find it out in nature. Okay. And as nice as polyester is, there's not like a polyester plant growing for us to get that kind of fiber for our clothes. We also have to keep in mind with texture too, that it also determines how a fabric moves when it's worn. As comfortable as this jacket may be, whether it be on a dog or a human, it's probably going to be pretty bulky. So it's not going to move as free flowing, and it's not really meant to. So if you use lighter fabrics with lighter textures, they're going to move a little bit more freely. So the different texture types, your soft and clingies would be like your jersey and your chiffon. So this would be like t-shirt material. This would be like prom dress material, or the overlay of prom dress. This is chiffon right here. Moderately crisp, meaning it's going to be a little bit thicker and going to have kind of more defined definition in there. It's going to be your corduroy and then your denim like this right here. And your extra crisp, which is going to be your thick fabrics, but not necessarily fluffy fabrics. That's going to be like taffeta and vinyl, which is going to be like on the inside of older cars. Think of leather as well. So some other different types of textures, smooth fabrics with a dull finish. That's going to be like your flannel and your broadcloth. So think of like your PJ pants. So they're very soft, very comfy. But they're not going to be super shiny. They're not meant to be unless something special is woven in there. Nubby and bulky would be like mohair and heavy tweeds. So think of like 1960s men's suit, 50s and 60s. I believe those were a little bit more on the tweed side. It's actually a really nice finish. They're just pretty heavy and you can get pretty hot in them. Some dull fabrics, another example again would be flannel and denim. So some of these belong to more than one category, as we see that flannel can also be smooth with the dull finish. Denim, we know, can also be moderately crisp. So, and the last one, shiny, would be satin and nylon. So satin, people commonly mistake satin and they want to call it silk because it's so soft. But it's actually not like that. Silk is actually not as soft as people think. True silk from a silkworm. However, satin is like its man-made counterpart. This is what people tend to think, like all these satin and silk. It's really pretty, and it really is. And it's rather soft and it's shiny and everything like that. But do know that satin tends to be polyester, and polyester is man-made. So that's basically what you guys need to know. We got through this relatively quickly. There's not a particular assignment that follows this. I would much rather you guys focus on the colors and lines because those are pretty obvious to see. So I just wanted you guys to know this information, to know that there are multiple elements of design, and these are the last three that we looked at. So we had texture, space, and shape. If you guys have any questions, make sure you email me. We'll see you later.